I think a lot of people just sit there on the side and just watch or wait for the perfect moment or just are so passive instead of just doing the next thing, doing the little step to get you closer, even though you don't have all the answers or anything like that. And I was like, what are you doing? And the guy started to cuss at me. And I'm like, I live here.
This is the Lifted Spirits podcast, where we raise a glass, share encouraging thoughts and stories, and discuss how we find meaning through family, friendship, art, business, and everything in between. Today I'm interviewing Heather, who runs an event space called the Brick Ballroom. It has a lot of weddings and other events, and so we discuss the crazy things that have happened there, and then how to bounce back when you're just creatively depleted and when pandemics hit and ruin your business plans and goals and all that sort of thing. So enjoy the conversation.
My dad, when we lived in California, he cleaned Snoop Dogg's pool.
Oh, wow. That's a claim.
Yeah. He went into his mansion and he said he'll always remember there was like this massive portrait of him in the stairwell, and he was like, okay.
Hey, I already started the camera, so that's such a great intro. Just,
back in the day, Snoop Dogg's gin and juice.
He was just in Northwest Arkansas not too long.
Was he really?
He was at I think Cane's Chicken or something, and passing things out to people. But anyway, before we get too much into who you are and what you do, because people always ask things like, what do you like? What do you do? I really like the question, what are you like? Mm-hmm. So if you had to describe yourself, what are you like?
What am I like? I am, it might come to some people's surprise, but I am an introvert. Mm-hmm. I am very out there and public and in the community and stuff, but I get worn out really, really fast. Yeah. And I like to recharge and be alone and be creative in my own brain.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that kind of throws people off a little bit.
I can relate to that because I'm pretty extroverted when I'm working, because I'm having to work with people and making things happen. But then people who would meet me in my normal life would think it was like a dual personality or something.
Exactly.
Don't talk as much.
Yeah. So that's one. I am very creative. Like, my brain does not think in numbers or anything like that. It creates things, and I can visualize anything. And that's what I've just noticed about me in my life. Like, when I was a kid, I would cut up clothes and redo them into something that I'd like. And then it turned into buildings. Like, I could see the potential of a building, and I have it created in my mind. And I get anxious to get it done and work on it and bring it to life. Yeah. So that's something about me. I'm trying to think of one more. I'm pretty easygoing.
Yeah.
I'm very chill. I'm a very chill person. Really nothing kind of irks me. So I tend to like a lot of people.
Yeah, no.
So
all the things you said, I can really relate to.
Yeah.
I cannot do math to save my life, but I can, even doing camera stuff, I hardly know how to work a camera. I just know in my mind what I want and trying to get the technology to do it.
Yep.
And so it's and I like people. I like being around them, but I can only do so much.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And then now you can share a bit more about who are you? What do you do?
Well, I'm Heather Lanker. And I own the Brick Ballroom.
Which is
That's
here.
here. It's a wedding venue, event space in the middle of downtown Siloam. And this project kind of stirred in me renovating buildings. And so from this project, because it's so huge, any project is not a big thing anymore. I've taken on other buildings around downtown, residential or commercial, and renovated them. So we have Arch and X downtown.
Okay.
I just renovated a little Airbnb across the street. It's the Penthouse Perch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And a farmhouse, one of the oldest farmhouses in Siloam. I found a picture at the museum and I tried to restore it to what it looked like.
That's really cute.
And then just a little house up the street that we're going to start working on.
Yeah. If you have pictures of those various things, we should. Later. Plug them in the video.
Yeah, I have pictures. I went online and I even looked at the original owner of the house and saw what he did. And I have pictures of like he had 6 kids because it's a huge farmhouse.
Yeah.
And so it's cool. He looks like a skinny Santa.
Yeah. I used to live right out of college in a house just 2 blocks from the university, and it was one of those old farmhouses. It had 6 bedrooms that was split between all sorts of roommates, and it was surrounded on all 4 sides by apartment complexes because it had just been there the whole time. And everything had sort of grown around it. And it was the weirdest Frankenstein type house. One of the rooms was it was on the 2nd floor, and you went in, and one of the walls was the old roof with the shingles and everything. So it was really cool, kind of like European with a loft above. So it was a neat place, but that made it sound fancy. Not European in the fancy sense, but like, like some of the balcony type thing. Just a hillbilly balcony.
Hillbilly balcony.
And what got you into just event spaces or just spaces?
So I guess going all the way back, I mentioned when I was a kid, I used to cut clothes up. My mom stored her sewing machine in my closet. And so one day when I was old enough, I was like, can I use this sewing machine? Because she doesn't use it. And she was like, sure. So I set it up and just started teaching myself how to sew. And so that was just kind of my entryway into being creative was clothing. And so I thought that I would go to FITM, the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in California, because that's where I grew up. And my parents were like, it's not really college. Like, you should go to college. And so I listened, and I ended up going to the master's college in Santa Clarita. And the only degree that came close to anything creative was home economics. So I tell everyone I have a home ec degree. I can't cook. Like, they made me do like not the major, but the minor in whatever your skill is. And so I have it in interior design and clothing construction. And then the food part of it I did, but it was horrible. Like, my husband does all the cooking, and I'm not into food. So basically, that's where I started and really got the clothing construction bug. I really love doing costume design. So out of college, since I lived near LA, I got a job at a costume house.
That's
in
right.
Hollywood.
I think you told me about that. Are there any noteworthy films that your work was featured?
Well, it wasn't film, it was the stage. So it was more like plays and things like that. Like Carol Burnett came in once. But it was just an amazing house. And the guy was like 90 years old. And he just had collected costumes for all those years. He used to be on TV as well. And so it was just like unorganized costumes everywhere. And someone would come in and say, we're doing the play for such and such. And so we would have to go to different areas and get different things to make the costume and then take it in. Or if someone came in and they were like, hey, I want an Elvis costume. I made an Elvis costume. Just like random things.
What's the strangest thing that you've made?
The strangest thing was this woman came in and she wanted a pair of dog ears made for her husband's birthday, like his 50th birthday. And I was like, that is so strange.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yes, exactly. I was like, okay, I don't even want to know. But I made them and yeah.
I want to know what they did with it.
I do, but I don't.
Never know. Yeah.
Yeah, they were like, we want a pair of Cocker Spaniel ears. And so that was, that was very random.
Where you stepped in. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then what's something with doing event spaces, like what sort of events do you mostly hold? Is it mostly weddings? And what sort of value do you feel like you're adding to people's lives and your own life through your business?
Yeah. So through all that, what brought me downtown into Northwest Arkansas was my husband came to work at JBU, and I had started a little girl's clothing line, and it was called Heather Hill. And when I drove through this downtown, I was like, I want to have a storefront here when I grow up. And so that kind of spurred me on. When my kids went to school, I moved into a little storefront and would sell my clothes out of there. I made all the clothes. And I just loved downtown. Yeah. And that eventually, I've moved like 3 times with my clothing line downtown. And the last time I moved, my landlord took all my warehouse space to renovate. And so I had to find another place to move. And so we thought maybe we would go back. I would go back home and I was shipping so much at the time through Zulily. I don't know if you heard of that. It was like a little kids, little outlet online thing. I was thinking about just putting a warehouse in our backyard because we lived outside city limits and just go back shipping. And my husband was like, you just love being around people and the people coming into your storefront and stuff. I think it would really like kill you not to be in the community. And I was driving downtown and I got to this stop sign right in front of my building, and God spoke to me as clear as day and said, go in and ask Dave, who owned this, if he would sell this building to me. And at first I was like, what? Am I making things up in my head? Like, I've never even been in this building. It was rough. And I got out of the car. I walked into Dave and I said, Dave, you don't know me, but will you sell this building to me? And he looked at me and he said, sure, let me show you around. And I was like, okay. And so he showed me around this huge building. I mean, this is a huge building. And it was just full of junk because he was like a tinkerer and an appliance kind of salesman.
And I feel like I've heard this at some point. Did this used to be some sort of like car?
Well, originally it was a car dealership, and then Dave, it passed hands through different people, and then Dave bought it in like the 80s, and he just had like stuff up into the rafters here. It was a maze to get through. I should send you pictures. Yes. You just would not even believe what this looked like.
Because this is a lot of space to build.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of like square footage?
I think it's 16,000 square feet, close to that, maybe 14. Yeah. But it was completely full. And so I left thinking, do I even want this building? Like, who's going to clean it? It's just crazy. So I went home and I told my husband, I was like, I think I just bought a building. So he was like, okay. Anyway, all that to say, he found out that he had cancer. And he was thinking, what am I going to do with this building? And he said, in walked this lady off the street and was like, hey, can I buy the building? And so he was like, I'll sell it to her.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's how I came upon the building. Originally, I bought it to put my clothing store in the front because it has 3 storefronts.
Yeah.
And so I started working on my storefront there, renovating it myself with my dad. And then other people came and were like, oh, I want to put a restaurant in the middle. And so they did that. And this space was just so vast and open. I just thought it would be so cool to do like events in here, like bands and things.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what my original thoughts were on it. And then I met with the city and I learned all about code.
Yay.
So
bureaucracy.
I was like, oh my word, like I have to sprinkler it. I have to do all this. I have to rebuild the mezzanine, bathrooms, everything. And so it was beyond my wheelhouse of me renovating.
Yeah.
So our town actually had a downtown like renovation type loan that 4 banks went in together to help somebody renovate an old building. So the risk wasn't as high. And so that's how I actually got the loan to do all of this, the project, and like bring it to code and things like that. And then as I was doing it, I was getting contacted by brides and they were like, we really want to get married here.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I could see that. But I'm doing it more for like bands and concerts. And there were just so many people calling me for that. I said to my husband, I said, I think we're going to have to change some of the plans to put in a bridal suite, to do this and that, catering and things.
Yeah.
So we kind of pivoted in the design, and I gave up a lot of my warehouse space for my clothes and did a catering space, a bridal suite, and it just kind of grew from that.
Yeah.
And then eventually the events business just took over my life.
Yeah.
And I designed for 20 years. My girls grew up. And so I ended up giving up the business in the front. So now there's a chiropractor in the front.
And so when was the first wedding here?
It was, I want to say 2017 is when we completed the project. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I'm sure. Which first off, you're welcome to like.
To drink?
Yeah, go in. We got
cheers. Should we cheers?
Oh, sure. Gin and fake gin, or not fake gin. It's like a non-alcoholic version. Oops, well, some, but that's really good. I like this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's cool.
Earthy. And so I'm sure you've had all sorts of people in here over the years. Are there any memorable stories from memorable in the not best possible way, and then memorable in the like very sentimental, both extremes?
Yes. Okay, so I'll go with the shocking story first. So 2 years into owning the venue, my girls went to college, and so we were empty nesters, and we lived outside of town in a big house, and I was like, we don't need this house anymore. It would be so nice to live closer to the venue, because at the time I was like doing a lot of the stuff myself. And so we had one area in this building that we still hadn't renovated. And I said to my husband, what if we renovate it to be a loft that we lived in? And so we actually live in a 2-bedroom loft on the other side of the wall up there on the mezzanine. And all of these different businesses and such are connected by doors.
Yeah.
And at the time, we had this big door, and it doesn't lock, it doesn't close, but you can hear it. It goes, yeah. And we could never get it to actually close. And it was fine, mostly. It's in the catering space. And then you go through that door, and it goes up this hallway with stairs. And you go through another mezzanine, and then you go, and there's a door, and that leads into my loft, into my closet. It's like Narnia up in there. So one day we were gone. There was a wedding going on. I came home. And there were people in my loft having sex. And I was like, oh, what are you doing? And the guy started to cuss at me. And I'm like, I live here.
Excuse me.
And I like ran out. I called Jason, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's people in the loft, and you have to come home. And so he came home, and we kind of like looked around and went downstairs. And apparently the people had told the bride, because the bride came up to me and was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, that week, I got someone to come in to fix that door and rekey everything that it is locked. There are signs now, even if they get through the locked door, like $600 fee if you go through this door and this door. I have no idea how they even got in there. It is such a maze to get into my loft. Like how they were drunk, but that was my horror story. Like burned in my mind forever.
Can't say I've ever had that happen to me.
Yeah, no, it was real bad.
And what about the maybe better surprises?
A better surprise.
Or not even a surprise, but just like maybe a couple or something where you're like, man, this was so good.
This was so good. Okay, I'm going to have to think about this one. I mean, one thing I do like, it's not necessarily a one-time thing, but I was trying to think of something more sentimental to me for the people who have gotten married here. And what I started doing was, from the very first one, is I had my architect plans. And so after every wedding, after they get married, I track them down at the reception, and I have them sign their new name and then put the date on the architect plans. And so it got so full about 3 years ago that my husband, for Christmas, he framed it, and it's in the hallway of the lobby now. And so we're working on page 2 of the architect plans.
That's such a great idea.
I just love that, because people, even on tours, come in and they'll be like, my friend got married here, and they'll like look for their name.
That's such a fun idea.
So, I really like that.
Yeah.
It kind of like they stick with me in this building. So
yeah, we have one of those from our wedding where all the people signed it who were there, like a big picture. And there, when you're getting married, everything's just a blur, and so there's so many people that I'm like, I didn't even know they were there. Another question I really like to ask people is just, what's the best thing that's happened to you, like in the past month? Just good news.
Good news. I would love to share this, but I can't.
Secret.
I know.
Somebody get engaged?
No, it's even bigger than that.
I know about that. They eloped.
Something good that's happened this month. In the last 2 months or 3 months. In the venue, we hired a venue manager. And so he works 20 hours a week here. And he came from LA. And so his family lives here. We're close with his family. And he's like done so well. Like, I feel like I could actually move out of the venue somewhere that I'm not in the business completely. He's just done such a great job in taking over all the little things that I'd have to worry about, that it's freed me up to do other projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been a huge just thing for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At some point with our business, we like to have maybe 1 or 2 employees where you can just outsource a little bit of the labor.
Yeah.
And so I'm really interested in hearing from people, like, what is it? Because more than just him, what is it like having a larger business that requires more employees? Like, I don't know anything. I've never had anyone on payroll.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's it's hard. It's hard managing people. At least for me, it is. So with our other business with Arch and Axe and stuff, we did have payroll and manager and things like that. But I think as an entrepreneur or solopreneur, like I personally have a hard time letting things go. When I first started the business, I wanted to do all the things. And I knew I couldn't do all the things. It's not sustainable, but I needed to know how it ran. So I knew who to hire for the things that I couldn't do. But yeah, I was like, okay, I'm going to clean the toilets. I'm going to do this. If there's a wedding the next day, like a double, I'm going to have set up. What do I need to what employee to fill what I don't want to do? And so having like Steven come, we opened up our, here is what we need. Can you fulfill these things? And or find people to do that for us. And it was just we were just such the same wheelhouse of things, but he's better at things than where I fall short, he's really good at. And so it just made sense to put him on payroll. So that that whole thing of hiring people and things, I would say to hire people who are a help, and obviously a help to you, but that you don't thrive in that space, to find somebody who can complement you in that. So
that's been a big lesson my wife and I have been learning, of figuring out what do we actually like and feel that we're good at in our respective fields, and then focusing on that and trying to outsource as much as possible that you're just not great at. And because it saves you the time and the headache. And then if you do something well, theoretically you'll be making more money to even pay people to do things that you are not as good at and don't really want to do. And, have you always been an entrepreneur or solopreneur? Where did that start? Did you just not want to have a
job?
Or the joke of I quit my 9 to 5 so I can work 24/7?
Pretty much. Yeah. I am, when I was doing the costume design, that was very free flowy hours wise. When my husband was getting his PhD, I did work as a substitute teacher, and I hated it. I hated being there from this time to this time. And I was just like, teachers, I mean, I was exhausted. I was like, I don't know how they do this. And so from that, I had my daughters, and I knew I wanted to stay home with them. But I did have the bug of doing a home-based business, and that's kind of where it started. Was I was home, I wanted to make money. My husband at the time was a youth pastor. So I just started sewing clothes for them. And it wasn't till somebody was chased me down in a parking lot. Was like, where did you get that outfit? And I said, I made it. And they were like, oh my gosh, I would totally buy that. And it got me thinking, okay, maybe I could start selling the things I sew. And that's really where it started from. I would actually sell clothing on eBay back in the day. It would be custom sewing, and my kids were my models, and I paid them in candy. And then when they got older, it turned to money. But so I always wanted to do something creative, knowing that I could not, be at a job sitting somewhere, just 9 to 5. And my husband recognizes that too, because sometimes I would be like, well, maybe I should go back to work, because there wasn't a lot of money in making kids clothes. And he would say, you would just be so miserable if you did that.
I think my problem is I wouldn't even necessarily mind a real job, but I feel like so many jobs are so bureaucratic that things that should be simple end up being really complicated. And I just cannot deal with that. Like, for me, if there's a problem, we think of a solution and we fix it.
And we do it.
Like, you don't just let it go on indefinitely and
have meetings about it.
Exactly. And I know, I remember hearing once that, I think it's at Tesla or something, that for their meeting policy is if you feel like the meeting isn't relevant to you, you don't go to it, because like you shouldn't be wasting your time going there. And I thought that makes a lot of sense.
That makes sense.
And practical. And then just in your, aside from any or it might include business, but just in your day-to-day life, what really has been bringing you the most drive and meaning, like what you've been getting up and being excited about and in life?
Well, I just bought this tiny little house up the street. There's a renter in there right now, but we're making plans to renovate it this summer. So my sister comes out. She's a teacher, and she stays with me over the summer, and we do big projects together because we both love to do manual labor. So right now we're getting all the plans made up and what we're going to like demo and things like that. And then once she comes, we're going to do it.
Yeah. What's I don't know all the words, like the theme or the vibe you're going for?
Well, and that's the thing. The house itself is a tiny little house. It's older. I'm thinking it was built maybe in the 40s. And so it's only 700 square feet. So I really am wanting to do gut a lot of it. It's 3 bedrooms, if you can imagine how they got 3 bedrooms out of it. But what I'm wanting to do is a big master, a bathroom, fix the kitchen, and then kind of later on do an addition to the back. So I don't know. I haven't been in there enough to get the vibe of decor-wise what I want to do. But I'm thinking more like William Morris, like arts and crafts, that kind of thing. Vibe, because I love color and I love print, and I think that is in the same era of the house. So that's what I'm thinking.
And we've covered some of the ups and downs, like your loft people and down, but then. And we've covered some of the ups, but for more of the downs, just in life in general, what are times in life that you've been really discouraged? And more importantly, how did you find a way out of that place, whether that's just a season of being overly stressed or overly busy, or there's losing a friend or whatever that may be?
Yeah. I would say probably the thing that sticks out in my mind is when I moved here from California, I had started the clothing business, the clothing line. I had all my seamstresses in LA, everything, pattern makers, things like that. And when we decided to move to Arkansas, we came to visit, and before we're going to move here to get all our ducks in a row. And I remember I went up to U of A and I met with their whatever department that is. It wasn't sewing, but they have a pattern maker. They have all the things. And they said, yeah, you could use our things. That would be fine, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, okay, I can continue building my brand in Arkansas. And when I actually moved here, it just all fell apart. U of A said, actually, because you're a business, you can't use our things.
Bureaucracy.
So I was like, how am I going to continue a clothing line in the middle of the country, where LA was 30 minutes away from me with the fabrics and the whole system. And so it was really hard. Like, we moved here and we didn't know anybody. We had no family here. I had a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I remembered, like, my husband going to work, and I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, my line is gone. I can't do anything. I have all this fabric. And I just thought it was over. Like, what do you do? You're just stuck. And I, like, sulked for about a month. Like, what am I going to do? And then my husband, I'm sure he told me more than once, but he's like, Heather, you know how to sew. You have the industrial sewing machines here that we brought. You have fabric. Just start doing what you love to do. Just start designing again. Go back 5 years and start there where you found passion and purpose. It doesn't need to be this big thing right now. And I didn't accept that right away. But it got me out and moving and going, okay, I'll start sewing again. And I would sew and sew and sew. And I remember, like, after a month, I had like 50 outfits, like little kid outfits. And I said, now look, I have all these clothes and nothing to do with them. And so we were like, okay, well, what can we do with them? And back in California, there wasn't like art shows and craft fairs and things like that, like it is here. And I remember hearing about the Dogwood Festival in Siloam. And I was like, okay, maybe I could sell my clothes at this festival. And so I looked at the rules and things, and it said, you have to have a tent, you have to have a setup, and you have to have pictures of all this. And so we bought a tent and we set it up in the living room. And then we just put my clothes everywhere and took a picture. And honestly, that gave me the start. The community would buy from me. And it was amazing. I mean, it wasn't amazing, but it just gave me a push into getting back into my craft when something such a blow to my just career at the time, to just go back and just do a restart. And honestly, from that, I would do shows all over. I learned how to drive a trailer and would do craft shows. And at one of the shows, that's where a buyer from Zulily approached me and said, hey, we'd like you to sell your line with us. And at the time, it was just me sewing. And I mean, I could sew a lot, but they were talking thousands of units. And then all that to say, I won a grant from Coke, and they said I could do anything I want with the money.
Cool.
I know, because I was a woman business. And so Jason and I flew to India, and we found a manufacturer and started mass producing
so cool.
our clothes. So we sold with Zulily for a couple years, and it was different from the industry because I would make a line of clothes every 2 months, where in the fashion industry, it's really like you make a line for summer or the summer, spring, and then fall and winter, where I was just designing, and just having it made and mass produced and then shipping.
Yeah.
And that's how it led to needing more warehouse and then getting this building.
Yeah.
So just, if I hadn't just gone back to my passion of what I love and finding that and allowing God to just open those doors, I think, what if I didn't go back to that and I just went to a job or something, like where my life would be.
Yeah, and
It would be so different.
for me, it's been really helpful to just start doing something,
Mhm.
like you're saying, like getting back into your sewing, just like something physical, something
Yep.
tangible.
Yep.
Because even it's better to do something than nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas you could be 30 days away and think, oh, I have nothing to show for it, or 30 days later and you think, well, at least I've got these few things.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
something. I
Yeah.
didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
And and especially like during the pandemic, lots of people losing their businesses. A lot of
Yes.
people have taken that kind of hit where they've either lost a business or just had to totally reorient how they do business.
Right.
And so a lot of people are rethinking this, and office space is still a thing. And so it's
Right.
a name of the game is adapt and
Yes,
survive.
it is. It really is. Yeah.
I kind of thrive off that too in business. It's kind of thrilling to know
Yeah.
that not necessarily at any point, but at any given season, you could just tank.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you've got to like
Yep.
shift a bit and roll with the punches and
Yep.
make things happen. I like the thrill.
Yeah. Yeah. I am more of a risk taker. My
Uh-huh.
husband is not.
Yeah, that's my wife. She's she's a risk taker too, but I'm like, what if we threw in like 80% of our savings into this? She's like, Andrew, we can't do that. Why not? Gotta go bigger, girl. I've watched too many of those Mr. Beast interviews because he's like a big YouTuber, but his whole philosophy is he invests all the money that he makes from his previous project into the next project.
Into the
And it's
next.
just this cycle of growing. And I'm like, we gotta just invest everything.
Everything.
But so what's one of your proudest moments just as a business owner? A time where you thought, you can pat yourself on the back,
Yeah.
but it's okay.
The most proudest I would think is I won for the state of Arkansas the best renovation project for a 2-year stint. And so the ballroom won that we had designed something out of all of Arkansas. They chose the ballroom as the best rehab of an old building that was just a waste.
Yeah.
And it won an award for being the best rehabilitated. So that was good.
It's hard to imagine this place being a waste, now as it is. I'm sure it was just trashy and stuff all over. But
you're gonna see it.
Was it white? Was it painted white?
Nope.
Probably not.
No, it had up there what record? I can't remember. It'll come to me later, but there was like a little symbol up there. And it was a mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then aside from business, just as a person, like what do you feel like is one of your biggest achievements or accomplishments in life in general?
Oh, my kids, 100%. Yeah. My daughters, I have 2 daughters. Madison's 23 and my youngest Elise is 20. And they just grew up with me in the business. Like they would get dropped off on the bus and walk down to my storefront and be with me. And I would pull them out of school so that they could go to the shows with me. And they've just been immersed in this. And Elise decided to go into business. And so she's a wealth manager at Arvest in Fayetteville. And then Madison's got more of my design person. And she's a graphic designer at Southern Trend. Okay. And so they both bought a house in Fayetteville together and they live up there. And I see their personalities just as they grew up and that they've kind of come into it.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see where they'll go in the future too, because we never stay the same.
Yeah. We're in the early stages. We've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, but our 4-year-old's getting a lot more personality. And so it's really fun to just, for one, to realize, it's my job to shape this creature for the next 15 years. And because it hasn't, I guess it's just a different stage of parenting. We're having actual conversations and asking actual questions. And, this was just this morning. He was talking, he got some worms and put them in a cup with some dirt. And he kept talking this morning about like, oh, the worms haven't woken up yet. And I was like, oh, I think those are
dead.
But you're 4. It's a little early to
yes, they're
to
still
broach
sleeping.
that. Yeah. Oh, he's gonna get back later today and be like, man, they're just really tired. I want to take a nap too. Everybody's tired.
That's right.
And then that's a lot of I like to ask people too, what's something in life that you feel like people focus too much on, and then something you feel like people focus too little on?
Okay, let me think about this one.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
Because when you boil down, like you're
Mhm.
talking about at the end of the day, like,
Yeah.
my family is what matters. And what are ways that you've maybe lost sight of the things that are valuable and realize like, wow, why did I do this? And why do people spend so much time on this? And we should be doing
Yeah.
ABC instead.
Yeah. Oh, deep. Well, this isn't really as deep, but something that you had said about just doing things, I see a lot of people just sitting there and waiting for it to be perfect and just sitting there or having it all their ducks in a row. And by no means have my ducks ever been in a row. Like people ask me all the time, like, how have you been successful? And honestly, it's just kind of, it's just doing the next thing, and not sitting there. My husband would totally disagree with like, no, we have to think about it and do this, which I agree to some point, but, eventually you have to get up and start, even if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people just sit there on the side and just watch or wait for the perfect moment or just are so passive, instead of just doing the next thing, doing the little step to get you closer, even though you don't have all the answers or anything like that.
Yeah. My brother and his roommate have a small real estate business, and his roommate says he's a ready, fire, aim kind of person where he just does things, whereas my brother, he says, is ready.
Yes, that's exactly. And it's good. It's funny. We always find each other, and Jason has pulled me back from doing stupid things as well. But in general, I see that in society that people just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait and talk and talk and talk, but they don't actually do an action towards what they want to do.
Yeah. People who are doing something go a long way in my book, even if whether people who have different perspectives on you, whether it's politics or religion or life in general, I can admire someone who's doing something and not just complaining, or just like writing online about stuff. It's like, go out and do something with your life.
Yeah.
And then I like to end with the question of what's something that a challenge maybe you might give people that would just help them become a more well-rounded, compassionate person. It could be something as simple as ask someone about their story or
we had something that comes to my mind right off the bat was just be open to saying yes. I know I was like, oh, I gotta self-care and all that. Saying no, I mean, I get that. But you just don't know all the time what your yes can bring. So an example is during the freezing weather that we just had in January, I was thinking about Arch and Axe and what we could maybe renovate it into something else. And I was talking to my husband about it, being maybe some kind of shelter or, home for low income or something like that. And he was like, no, Heather, that's not what you want to do. And so I was like, okay. And I was like, well, it was just an idea. And the next day I went to our Main Street meeting, which is held in our lobby. And the Main Street director at the end said, I'm really concerned with how many homeless people are in our downtown, and it's going to be freezing. And she's like, does anybody know where they could go? Like in the city, has anybody opened anything? And no one could think of anything. And so I just got this nagging feeling, I think it was God, and was like, just open Arch and X. Like, just open Arch and X. Like, you have heat. No one's in there. You can hide the axes. And so after all that, like 3 times, and me mulling over, like, oh, this is dumb. They'll find a place to go, blah, blah, blah. I said, I can open Arch and X. And just by saying yes to that, our community of Siloam, I've never seen a community come together like it did. And I'm not like even exaggerating. I put one post up on Facebook and it just exploded. And people came. We had so many sleeping bags and the food that they brought and sign up to volunteer. It was just, it blew my mind. And I just think, what if I hadn't just opened my mouth to say yes? I mean, I didn't know how it was going to look. I honestly thought I was going to unlock a door and they were going to come in and out. But just, being willing to do something that maybe, you know, God wants you to do or is speaking to you, to just do it. Just because you don't know what the outcome's going to be. And I mean, it just, it changed, I think, our community. So our community now is talking about the homelessness here, that I think we kind of blank over, to not see. So
that's great.
So
yeah. Well, I love that answer.
I don't even know what I answered. Just like I just went on a story binge again.
Hey, that's what we're here for. I try to keep the podcast very stories focused, because I love some podcasts you listen to and people talk a lot about ideas and like far off things, which can be interesting, but I really love to just hear someone's experience. I feel like I learn a lot more from people's lives and saying, yeah, I did this and it was great, or I did this and do not try
that.
You know? And, so it's great to hear your experiences and any last things you'd want to add or throw out to the community.
I hate last things. I know.
Yeah. We'll just plug any of your, you know, with the links down.
Come see me at the Brick Ballroom.
This is Heather, the Brick Ballroom. It's beautiful. And thanks for chatting.
Yeah, thanks.